The first sign that something was wrong came from the Kepler station monitoring array, a collection of deep space sensors positioned at the edge of the Terminus Nebula. Senior analyst Vexai had been tracking routine shipping lanes when her screens lit up with an impossible reading. "Commander," she called across the sterile white command center, her four arms dancing across holographic displays with practiced efficiency. "We're detecting an energy signature moving through the nebula. Configuration unknown." Commander Talmoran, a towering figure from the aquatic world of Hydros Prime, rippled his gill slits in annoyance. His species had evolved in the deep ocean trenches, and patience was encoded in their very DNA. But lately, patience had become a luxury they couldn't afford. The hegemony war was stretching their resources thin, and false alarms were the last thing they needed. "Debris field?" he asked, his translator converting his subsonic vocalizations into standard galactic common. "We've been picking up echoes from the battle at Proxima Station for weeks." "Negative, sir." Vexai's compound eyes reflected the sensor data streaming across her screens. "This signature is organized, moving with purpose. And, Commander, the energy readings don't match any known propulsion system." The command center fell silent except for the gentle hum of environmental systems. Talmoran's massive form moved with surprising grace as he approached Vexai's station, his webbed hands clasping behind his back. What he saw on the screens made his blood chill. The energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. It wasn't the clean fusion burn of Alliance ships, nor the distinctive quantum distortion of hegemony vessels. This was something else entirely, raw, powerful, and somehow organic in its complexity. "How many ships?" Talmoran asked. "That's just it, sir," Vexai replied, her voice uncertain. "I'm reading it as a single massive vessel, but the internal structure suggests multiple independent units operating in perfect coordination. It's like a school of deep-sea hunters moving as one." Before Talmoran could respond, Communications Officer Zephyr spoke up from across the room. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from the unknown vessel. Put it through." The main display shimmered, and suddenly they were looking at something that made every being in the command center freeze. The creature on screen appeared to be bipedal, but beyond that, it defied easy categorization. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched over what appeared to be an internal skeleton rather than the chitinous exoskeletons common to most spacefaring species. Most unsettling were its eyes, two forward-facing organs that seemed to track everything simultaneously, predator's eyes that spoke of a species that had hunted rather than been hunted. "Galactic Council Station." The creature spoke, its voice carried by a translation matrix that seemed to struggle with the unfamiliar linguistic patterns. "This is Captain Sarachon of the Earth Expeditionary Fleet. We are responding to your distress beacon." Talmoran's gills flared in confusion. "We haven't sent any distress beacon." The human, for that's what the impossible creature called itself, tilted its head in what their xenobiological databases would later identify as a gesture of confusion. "Our sensors indicate massive combat debris throughout this system. Multiple life signs in distress. Are you under attack?" "The battle occurred 6 standard days ago," Talmoran replied cautiously. "The hegemony forces have withdrawn. We are conducting search and rescue operations." Something changed in the human's expression. The features shifted in ways that Talmoran's species had no context for, but every predator instinct developed over millions of years of evolution screamed danger. "6 days?" the human said quietly. "Your people have been suffering for 6 days, and no one came?" "The nearest Alliance fleet is 3 weeks away," Vexai interjected. "We are a monitoring station. We have no military vessels." The human was silent for several heartbeats. When it spoke again, its voice carried undertones that their translation software couldn't quite capture, but every being listening felt a chill. "Captain Chun to all ships," the human said, apparently speaking to someone off-screen. "Emergency deployment. Full rescue configuration. And prep the medical bays. It sounds like we're going to need them." Unknown vessel. Talmoran interrupted. Identify yourself and state your intentions. You are not showing in any Alliance registry. The human looked directly into the camera with those unsettling, forward-facing eyes. Commander, my name is Sarah Chun, and I represent the human colonial fleet. We've been traveling for a very long time, and we don't appear in your registries because until today, your people thought we were a myth. Before anyone could respond, Zephyr called out an alarm. Commander, multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. I count by the depths. I count over 200 vessels. The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Ships of designs that existed nowhere in Galactic Council databases, each one broadcasting identification codes that claimed to be human vessels. The energy signatures were all wrong. Too powerful, too efficient, technology that shouldn't have been possible. This is impossible, Vexai whispered. According to our xenobiological databases, humans are a theoretical species. A thought experiment in impossible evolution. Captain Chun heard this and smiled, an expression that translated poorly, but somehow conveyed both amusement and something darker. Commander Talmoran, with your permission, we'd like to begin search and rescue operations. Our ships are equipped with medical facilities that can handle most known life forms, and we've got engineering teams that specialize in salvage operations. You came here to help? Talmoran asked, still struggling to process what he was seeing. We came because someone was in trouble, Chun replied simply. That's what we do. Over the next several hours, Kepler Station's crew watched in amazement as the human fleet deployed with military precision to conduct the largest rescue operation in recorded galactic history. Their ships moved through the debris field like living things, their technology somehow able to detect life signs that Alliance sensors had missed entirely. The humans worked tirelessly, pulling survivors from wreckage that had been written off as total losses. Their medical ships were miracles of engineering, equipped with adaptive treatment pods that could adjust to the physiological needs of dozens of different species. Their engineering vessels wielded tools that could cut through collapsed bulkheads without harming the beings trapped inside. But it was their behavior that truly baffled the watching Galactic Council personnel. These humans threw themselves into danger without hesitation, risking their own lives to save beings they had never met, from species they had no diplomatic ties with. When a section of destroyed cruiser began to collapse while human rescue teams were still inside, Captain Chen's ship moved to physically support the structure with its own hull, accepting damage to save both the trapped survivors and their own people. Why? Talmoran finally asked during one of their regular communications. Why risk so much for strangers? Chun paused in her coordination of the rescue efforts, and for a moment her alien features showed something that Talmoran's translator interpreted as profound sadness. Because, Commander, we know what it's like to be alone in the dark, waiting for someone to come. We know what it feels like when no one does. By the time the rescue operations concluded, the humans had saved over 3,000 beings that the Alliance had assumed were dead. They had repaired critical systems on Kepler Station, provided medical supplies that would last for months, and shared technology that would revolutionize Galactic Council engineering. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they prepared to leave. Wait, Talmoran called as Captain Chen's image appeared on screen one final time. The Galactic Council will want to establish formal contact. There will be protocols, treaties, exchange programs. Chen shook her head. Commander, right now we need to return to our fleet. But I have a feeling we'll be seeing each other again soon. The galaxy seems to be heating up, and humans have never been good at sitting on the sidelines when people need help. But where will you go? How can we reach you? When you need us, Chun said with that strange human smile, we'll be there. The human fleet departed as quickly as it had arrived, leaving behind only their rescued survivors and a galaxy-shaking revelation. The myths were real, and humanity had just announced its presence in a very big way. In the days that followed, emergency sessions were called throughout the Galactic Council. Xenobiologists scrambled to reconcile their theoretical models with the reality they had witnessed. Military analysts tried to understand technology that seemed to violate established physical laws. But, in the end, one question dominated every discussion. If humans were real, and if they possessed technology and capabilities beyond anything the galaxy had seen, why had they remained hidden for so long? The answer to that question would reshape everything they thought they knew about the galaxy, the war, and the ancient myths that spoke of a species too impossible to be real. Because sometimes the most dangerous legends are the ones that choose when to step out of the shadows. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had witnessed many historic moments across its 3,000-year existence, but none quite like this. Representatives from 47 different species filled the vast amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, chirps, subsonic rumbles, and electromagnetic pulses that the universal translators worked overtime to convert into comprehensible discourse. At the center of it all stood High Counselor Mordan, whose crystalline form reflected the chamber's lights in prismatic patterns that indicated deep contemplation mixed with barely controlled anxiety. The Crystarch had lived for over 800 years, serving on the council for the last 2 centuries, and had never faced a situation quite like this. Order. Mordan's harmonic resonance cut through the chaos, causing the assembled representatives to settle into their species-appropriate seating arrangements. We are here to discuss the implications of what the media are already calling first human contact, though I remind you all that this designation may not be entirely accurate. A ripple of movement went through the assembly as Counselor Vexthera, representing the Arachnoid Coalition, raised 2 of her 8 arms. Her species had evolved from social hunters, and their political instincts were finely tuned. High Counselor, with respect, the accuracy of the designation is the least of our concerns. These humans appeared out of nowhere with technology that our best scientists claim violates known physics, conducted a military operation in council space without authorization, and then vanished. This represents either a massive intelligence failure or what, Counselor? The interruption came from Ambassador Churan of the Ethereal Collective, his gaseous form shifting colors to indicate skepticism. You suspect some sort of elaborate deception? To what end? Unknown motivations are exactly what make this situation dangerous, Vexthera replied, her mandibles clicking in agitation. We have no idea where they came from, what they want, or what capabilities they truly possess. For all we know, this rescue operation was reconnaissance for an invasion. Several representatives began speaking at once, but High Counselor Mordan's harmonic pulse restored order. Let us review what we know factually before engaging in speculation. The chamber's central display activated, showing a compilation of sensor data, communication logs, and visual recordings from the Kepler station incident. The assembled counselors watched in silence as the human fleet materialized from the Terminus Nebula, conducted their rescue operations with impossible efficiency, and departed without making any demands or formal contact requests. The technical analysis has been completed by our finest minds, Mordan continued. Their propulsion systems appear to be based on principles we don't understand. Their energy output suggests matter-antimatter reactions, but contained in ways that should be impossible. Their medical technology was able to treat 17 different species simultaneously, adapting in real time to physiological requirements they should have had no knowledge of. Which brings us to the most disturbing question, interrupted Counselor Brixmar, whose rocky, silicon-based form scraped against his seating platform as he shifted. The lithoid representative had a reputation for cutting straight to the heart of matters. How did they know our physiology? How do they speak our languages? How do they know where to find us? An uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. It was Counselor Velasa from the Botanical Federation who finally spoke, her photosynthetic patches flickering with distress signals. Perhaps we should be asking different questions. Instead of focusing on what they might want from us, perhaps we should consider why they helped us at all. Naivety, snorted Counselor Thekvor, his reptilian features showing clear disdain. The Saurian Empire had built their civilization on the principle that strength determined survival, and acts of altruism without clear benefit made no sense to their worldview. No species expends resources to help strangers without expecting something in return. This was clearly a calculated move designed to make us lower our guard. Then, where are the demands? Velasa countered. Where are the follow-up communications? Where are the requests for territory, resources, or political concessions? They saved 3,000 lives and left. What kind of invasion strategy begins with saving the people you intend to conquer? High Counselor Mordun raised a crystalline appendage for attention. Which brings us to our next concern. Dr. Kynera, would you please share your historical analysis? The head of the Council's archaeological division approached the central podium, her six-limbed form moving with the careful precision of someone who spent their life handling ancient artifacts. Dr. Kynera's species, the hexapods, were renowned throughout the galaxy for their methodical approach to research and their incredible attention to detail. Honored counselors, she began, her voice carrying the weight of disturbing discoveries. Following the Kepler Station incident, I was tasked with conducting a comprehensive review of our historical archives. What I found changes everything we thought we knew about galactic history. The chamber fell silent as Dr. Kynera activated her presentation. Ancient symbols, archaeological records, and mythological texts from dozens of civilizations appeared on the display. These are references to beings matching human descriptions, found in the historical records of civilizations spanning the last 10,000 years. They appear in creation myths, war legends, and historical account from species that had no contact with each other. The display shifted to show artistic representations from various cultures. Despite the different artistic styles, certain consistent elements emerged. Bipedal figures with forward-facing eyes, often depicted helping other species in times of crisis, sometimes shown as warriors of incredible ferocity. The Veltari ancient texts speak of the wanderers from the Black who appeared during the Plague years and shared medical knowledge that saved their civilization. The early Christarch historical crystals contain recordings of beings who helped them develop faster-than-light communication during the Age of Silence. The lithoid creation stones tell of the soft ones who taught them to harness stellar energy. Counselor Brixmar leaned forward, his rocky features showing confusion. Dr. Kynera, are you suggesting these humans have been secretly influencing galactic development for millennia? I'm suggesting something far more disturbing, Dr. Kynera replied. I believe these humans haven't been hiding from us. I believe they've been protecting us. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Representatives erupted in protests, demands for clarification, and accusations of academic fantasy. High Counselor Mordun's harmonic pulses grew louder and more insistent before order was finally restored. Explain, Mordun commanded simply. Dr. Kynera took what passed for a deep breath among her species. Look at the pattern of appearances. Every recorded human contact occurs during times of existential crisis for the contacted species. Wars that threaten extinction, plagues that could wipe out entire worlds, natural disasters that could destroy civilizations. They appear, provide exactly the help needed, and then disappear. You're describing a protection racket, Thekvor growled. Create the crisis, then swoop into play savior. No, Dr. Kynera said firmly. The crises are always natural or the result of internal conflicts. The humans never cause them. They simply respond to them. And there's something else. Every species that records contact with humans shows a marked increase in technological development, cultural advancement, and peaceful expansion afterward. Counselor Churan's gaseous form swirled in agitation. This is speculation built on myth and legend. Ancient peoples often created stories to explain help they received from more advanced neighbors. Perhaps, Dr. Kynera acknowledged, but consider this. If humans possess the technology we witnessed at Kepler Station, if they've had it for thousands of years, why haven't they conquered the galaxy? What species develops the capability for galactic domination and then chooses to remain hidden, only emerging to help others? The question hung in the air like a challenge. It was Counselor Velasa who finally voiced what many were thinking. A species that evolved differently than the rest of us. A species that developed cooperation and altruism as survival traits rather than competition and aggression. Impossible, HFY declared. Predator species cannot evolve altruistic behavior toward other species. It violates every principle of evolutionary biology. Does it? Dr. Kynera asked quietly. Or does it violate every principle we think we understand? Counselors, I believe we are facing a species that represents an evolutionary path none of us took. They became apex predators not through individual strength or pack hunting of their own kind, but through cooperation with other species entirely. Which brings us to our current situation. Hi, Counselor Moredun interjected, recognizing that the debate was beginning to spiral into philosophical territory. Whatever the historical truth may be, we must decide how to respond to current reality. The hegemony war is escalating, our resources are stretched thin, and we now know there is a highly advanced species operating in the galaxy that we understand very little about. Counselor Vextera's arms moved in agitation. We must establish formal contact immediately. If they possess technology superior to both the Alliance and the hegemony, they could tip the balance of the war. Or they could decide we're not worth protecting, Thekvor added grimly. If Dr. Kynera's theory is correct, humans only help species they deem worthy. What happens when a species disappoints them? What happens, interrupted a new voice, is that we do our best to help them find a better path. Every being in the chamber turned toward the source of the voice. Standing in the public gallery, somehow having bypassed every security system in the most heavily guarded facility in the galaxy, was a human. The figure was tall for its species, with the characteristic forward-facing eyes and predatory grace that had been described in the reports. But, unlike Captain Chen's military bearing, this human wore simple civilian clothing and carried itself with an air of casual confidence that suggested either supreme arrogance or complete fearlessness. I am Dr. Marcus Webb, the human said calmly as security forces scrambled to respond. I'm here to answer your questions. How did you get in here? High Counselor Moredun demanded, his crystalline form flashing with alarm. Dr. Webb smiled, that unsettling human expression, the same way we've been getting around unnoticed for thousands of years. We're very good at being wherever we need to be. Are you threatening the Council? Thekvor rose from his seat, his massive reptilian form radiating aggression. On the contrary, Dr. Webb replied, his voice remaining perfectly calm despite being surrounded by beings who could easily overpower him physically. I'm here because you deserve to know the truth before you make any decisions that might affect the future of galactic civilization. What truth? Moredun asked. Dr. Webb's expression grew serious. The truth about why we've remained hidden. The truth about what's coming. And the truth about why, after thousands of years of staying in the shadows, we've finally decided to reveal ourselves. The hegemony war, Counselor Churan said with sudden understanding. You're here because of the war. Not the war you're fighting now, Dr. Webb replied quietly. The war that's coming. The one that will make your current conflict look like a minor disagreement between neighbors. Explain, Moredun commanded, his harmonic resonance carrying undertones of growing alarm. Dr. Webb looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many representatives as possible with that direct, predatory gaze that made every prey instinct scream warnings. Counselors, you are about to face an enemy that has been preparing for this moment for over 50,000 years. An enemy that has been quietly watching, learning, and growing stronger while you focused on your internal conflicts. An enemy that views every species in this galaxy as either a resource to be harvested or an obstacle to be eliminated. What enemy? Vextera demanded. Our intelligence networks monitor the entire galaxy. There is no unknown threat of that magnitude. Dr. Webb's smile returned, but this time it held no warmth at all. That's what they want you to think. But the Devourers are coming, Counselors. And when they arrive, You're going to discover why humanity has spent the last 10,000 years preparing for war. The silence in the Grand Assembly Hall stretched for what felt like an eternity before High Counselor Mordun found his voice. Dr. Webb, these are extremely serious accusations. If you expect the Council to take action based on your claims, we will require substantial evidence. Dr. Webb nodded, as if he had expected this response. Of course, but before I show you what we know about the Devourers, you need to understand how we know it. And that means I need to tell you the real story of humanity's journey to the stars. He gestured, and somehow, despite having no visible technology, a holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. The assembled counselors murmured in amazement at the casual demonstration of technology that should have been impossible. 53,000 years ago, humanity was a young species, barely beginning to explore our home solar system. We were curious, optimistic, and completely unprepared for what we found waiting for us in the dark between the stars. The hologram showed a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star, primitive spacecraft beginning to venture beyond their planetary cradle. Then, the scene shifted, showing massive structures drifting in the void. Artificial constructs the size of moons, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. We called them the architects at first, Dr. Webb continued. The structures were clearly built by intelligence, but they were ancient beyond our ability to comprehend. Our xenoarchaeologists estimated they were at least 2 million years old, possibly much older. Counselor Brixmar leaned forward, his rocky features showing intense interest. Were they abandoned? Dead civilizations often leave monuments behind. We thought so initially. The structures showed no signs of current activity, no energy signatures, no responses to our attempts at communication. We established research stations, began studying the technology, trying to understand what had built these marvels. The holographic display shifted again, showing human scientists working inside the alien structures, their faces filled with wonder and excitement. But then the scene changed, and Dr. Webb's expression darkened. We learned too late that the architects weren't dead. They were sleeping, and our presence woke them up. The hologram now showed chaos. The ancient structures suddenly blazing with terrible energy, human research stations being consumed by something that looked more like living shadow than any recognizable technology. Ships fleeing in panic as reality itself seemed to bend around the awakening constructs. What we had mistaken for monuments were actually hives, Dr. Webb explained, his voice carrying the weight of ancient trauma. The entities we had awakened were not the builders of these structures. They were something far worse. They were the things that had consumed the builders, wearing their technology like a skin. Dr. Kynera spoke up from the archaeological section. Dr. Webb, this sounds remarkably similar to several extinct civilizations we've studied. Advanced species that simply vanished, leaving behind empty worlds and inexplicable technology. Because they didn't vanish, Dr. Webb replied grimly. They were harvested. The Devourers move through the galaxy in cycles, appearing every 50 to 60,000 years to feed. They consume not just biological matter, but consciousness itself. Intelligence, creativity, the very spark that makes a species unique. How did humanity survive? Velasa asked, her photosynthetic patches flickering with distress. Barely, and only by making a choice that still haunts us. The hologram shifted to show human fleets fleeing through space, pursued by things that defied visual comprehension. Entities that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, their forms constantly shifting between geometric impossibility and organic nightmare. We couldn't fight them directly. Our weapons were useless against beings that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our shields couldn't protect against entities that could reach through space itself to touch our minds. So we ran. We scattered across the galaxy in every direction, abandoning our homeworld and everything we had built. Thekvor's reptilian features showed confusion. But You said you've been protecting other species for thousands of years. How could you be both refugees and guardians? Dr. Webb paused, and for the first time since his appearance, he seemed to struggle with emotion. Because running wasn't enough. The Devourers didn't just want to consume us. They wanted to understand us. They began hunting us across the galaxy, learning from each encounter, adapting to our strategies. Worse, they began experimenting with the species they encountered along the way, using them as test subjects to better understand how to fight us. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. Counselor Churan's gaseous form swirled in agitation. You're saying that for 50,000 years, every species in this galaxy has been at risk because the Devourers were hunting humanity? Not at risk, actively threatened. We realized that every time we tried to settle somewhere, we brought danger to the local populations. So we made a decision. Instead of hiding and hoping the Devourers would give up, we decided to fight back. Not just for ourselves, but for every species that might become collateral damage in their hunt. The holographic display changed again, showing human fleets arriving at worlds under attack by creatures of living shadow, human ships throwing themselves between the Devourers and their intended victims, buying time for evacuations while human scientists worked frantically to understand and counter the enemy's capabilities. We became nomads by necessity and guardians by choice, Dr. Webb continued. We couldn't settle anywhere permanently, but we could watch. We could learn. And when the Devourers found a species that wasn't ready to defend itself, we could intervene. The pattern Dr. Kura identified. More done said with growing understanding. Humans appearing during crises, providing just enough help for species to survive and advance. Every species we helped became stronger, more capable of defending itself when the Devourers returned. We couldn't tell them about the threat directly. That knowledge would have caused panic and despair. But we could prepare them indirectly, give them the tools and knowledge they would need. Vextara's mandibles clicked in agitation. If this threat is real, why haven't we detected any sign of these Devourers? Our sensor networks monitor the entire galaxy. Because they learn to hide from you the same way they learn to hide from us, Dr. Webb replied. The Devourers are patient. They spend decades studying their targets before striking, infiltrating through dimensions we barely understand, learning weaknesses and planning perfect attacks. But they're coming now? Velasa asked. They're already here. Dr. Webb's words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of fear through the assembled counselors. The hegemony war isn't what you think it is. The faction you're fighting isn't an independent, aggressive power seeking expansion. It's a puppet state controlled by advanced scouts of the Devourer fleet. The revelation hit the chamber like an explosion. Representatives began speaking over each other, demands for proof mixing with expressions of disbelief and fear. High Counselor Mordunn's harmonic pulses grew urgent as he tried to restore order. That's impossible, Thekvor declared once the chaos subsided. We know the hegemony leadership. We've monitored their communications, studied their technology. They're aggressive expansionists, but they're recognizably biological entities following understandable political motivations. Are they? Dr. Webb asked quietly. When did the hegemony first appear? What do you actually know about their origins? The question sparked uncomfortable murmurs throughout the chamber. Dr. Kinera spoke hesitantly. The hegemony emerged approximately 8 standard years ago from the void regions beyond the galactic rim. Initial contacts suggested they were refugees from an extragalactic conflict, seeking new territory to settle. And you accepted this explanation without investigation because it fit known patterns of migration and expansion, Dr. Webb said. But did you ever wonder why a species advanced enough for intergalactic travel would need to conquer rather than simply request settlement rights? Did you question why their technology, while powerful, was completely incompatible with galactic standard systems? You're suggesting the entire hegemony is some form of alien infiltration? Churan asked, his gaseous form shifting through colors that indicated deep skepticism. I'm suggesting that the beings you think of as the hegemony leadership are what's left of species that encountered the Devourers and made a different choice than humanity did. Instead of running or fighting, they submitted. They allowed themselves to be consumed and transformed, becoming willing servants in exchange for a form of continued existence. Dr. Webb gestured, and the holographic display showed creatures that might once have been biological entities, but had been transformed into something else entirely. Their forms were partially mechanical, partially organic, and partially something that existed outside normal space-time. The consumed serve as advanced scouts, preparing target species for harvest. They establish conflicts that weaken civilizations, gather intelligence on defensive capabilities, and identify the strongest individuals for special attention when the main force arrives. How long? Mordun asked, his crystalline form dim with dread. How long before this main force arrives? According to our calculations, 18 months. Maybe less. The Devourer fleet is already approaching from the galactic rim, using the hegemony war as cover for their positioning. When they're ready, the current conflict will end abruptly, and the real invasion will begin. Brixmar scraped against his platform in agitation. If you've known this was coming, why wait until now to warn us? Why not reveal yourselves years ago and help us prepare? Because revealing ourselves was incredibly dangerous, Dr. Webb replied. The Devourers have been hunting us for 50,000 years. Every time we expose our presence, we risk giving them the advantage they need to find and destroy us completely. We only decided to emerge now because we've finally found a way to fight them. What way? Vextera demanded. Dr. Webb's human smile returned, but this time it carried something predatory and fierce. We're going to do what humanity has always done best. We're going to turn our greatest weakness into our greatest strength. Meaning what exactly? Meaning that for 50,000 years, the Devourers have been hunting humanity across the galaxy, learning from every encounter, adapting to every strategy we've employed. They think they understand us completely. Don't they? Velasa asked. They understand individual humans, Dr. Webb replied. They understand human ships, human technology, human tactics. What they've never encountered is what happens when humanity stops running and starts working with others. What they've never faced is human creativity and adaptability combined with the unique capabilities of dozens of different species. The implications began to dawn on the assembled counselors. High Counselor Mordun's harmonic resonance carried new undertones of hope mixed with determination. You're proposing an alliance, he said, a true partnership between humanity and the Galactic Council. I'm proposing something more than that, Dr. Webb replied. I'm proposing that we teach the Devourers why humanity survived when so many other species didn't. Not because we're stronger individually, but because we're capable of becoming something greater when we work together. And if we refuse? Fekvor asked bluntly. Dr. Webb's expression grew sad. Then, in 18 months, this galaxy will join the countless others that have fallen to the Devourers over the past 2 million years. And humanity will continue our 50,000-year flight to nowhere, carrying the memory of another civilization that could have been saved. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of environmental systems. Finally, High Counselor Mordun spoke. Dr. Webb, the Galactic Council will need time to consider your proposal. This goes beyond anything in our constitutional framework. Of course, Dr. Webb replied. But don't take too long. The Devourers won't wait for bureaucratic processes to be completed. How will we contact you when we've reached a decision? Dr. Webb's smile returned. Don't worry about that, High Counselor. When you're ready to begin preparing for war, we'll be there. And with that, he simply vanished, leaving behind only questions, fear, and the growing realization that everything they thought they knew about the galaxy was about to change forever. The emergency session had lasted 72 hours straight, the longest continuous council meeting in galactic history. Representatives huddled in species groups, their various forms of communication creating a constant background symphony of clicks, whistles, harmonic resonances, and electromagnetic pulses. The translation matrices worked overtime, occasionally failing entirely when emotions ran too high for accurate conversion. High Counselor Mordun stood at the center of the chaos, his crystalline form now showing stress fractures that reflected the impossible decisions weighing on the assembly. In 3 days of debate, they had confirmed much of what Dr. Webb had told them. Deep archive searches had revealed disturbing patterns in hegemony behavior, communication intercepts that made more sense when viewed as coordination with an outside force, and, most damning of all, energy signatures from hegemony vessels that didn't match any known technology. Order. Mordun's harmonic pulse finally cut through the noise. We have debated long enough. The intelligence reports confirm Dr. Webb's claims about hegemony infiltration. The archaeological evidence supports the existence of something like these devourers throughout galactic history. We must make a decision. Counselor Thekvor rose from his platform, his massive reptilian form radiating the aggressive confidence his species was known for. High Counselor, I move that we reject the human proposal entirely. We cannot trust a species that has deliberately deceived us for millennia. How do we know this isn't simply a more elaborate deception designed to manipulate us into giving them access to our military resources? A chorus of agreement rose from several representatives, particularly those from species with strong territorial instincts. But Counselor Velasa stood to respond, her photosynthetic patches flickering with urgency. Counselor Thekvor, your paranoia blinds you to reality. The humans could have conquered the galaxy at any point in the last 1,000 years if that had been their goal. Instead, they saved our ancestors, protected our worlds, and asked for nothing in return. Now, they're offering to help us prepare for a threat that could destroy everything we've built. Precisely. Thekvor's voice carried the growling undertones that indicated extreme agitation in his species. They're offering to help us prepare for a threat only they know about, using methods only they understand, against an enemy only they have encountered. How is that not the perfect setup for manipulation? Dr. Kynera requested permission to speak, her 6 limbs moving with careful precision as she activated her research display. Counselors, I've completed additional analysis of the historical data. The pattern is undeniable. Every 50 to 60,000 years, advanced civilizations throughout the galaxy simply vanish. Not gradually through war or plague, but completely and suddenly. The timing coincides exactly with what Dr. Webb described as devourer cycles. Correlation is not causation, Thekvor replied, but his voice carried less certainty than before. No, Dr. Kynera agreed, but when you combine the historical pattern with the current anomalies in hegemony behavior, the technological impossibilities we witnessed at Kepler Station, and the fact that humans have apparently been watching over galactic civilization for millennia without seeking conquest, the evidence becomes overwhelming. Counselor Churan's gaseous form swirled in complex patterns as he processed the implications. Even if we accept that the threat is real, that doesn't mean we should trust humanity completely. Perhaps there's a middle path. Accept their warning, but maintain our independence in responding to it. With what resources? The question came from Counselor Brixmar, whose silicon-based metabolism gave him a uniquely practical perspective on logistics. Our fleets are already stretched thin fighting the hegemony. Our shipyards are operating at maximum capacity just to replace current losses. If the humans are correct about the timeline, we have 18 months to prepare for an enemy that destroyed civilizations with millions of years of advancement. We cannot do this alone. High Counselor Mordun's crystalline form pulsed with decision-making frequencies. The debate has clarified our options. We can reject the human offer and attempt to face this threat alone, knowing that every previous civilization failed. We can accept their offer completely, trusting in their goodwill despite our lack of understanding of their true capabilities. Or we can attempt to negotiate a limited partnership that maintains our autonomy while benefiting from their knowledge. I propose a fourth option, a new voice interrupted. Every being in the chamber turned toward the speaker. Counselor Zuraketh from the Psionic Collective, a species whose mental abilities had made them legendary throughout the galaxy. The psionics rarely spoke in council sessions, preferring to observe and analyze the emotional undercurrents of discussions. When they did contribute, their insights were invariably profound. "Continue," Counselor Mordun said, his harmonic resonance carrying respectful attention. Zaraketh's form, humanoid, but elongated, with skin that seemed to shift between translucent and opaque, moved with fluid grace as she approached the central platform. "I propose that we test the humans. Not their technology or their military capabilities, but their true nature. The Psionic Collective has techniques that can reveal the deepest motivations and hidden agendas of any sentient being." "You're suggesting a mind probe?" Vexthra asked, her mandibles clicking with concern. "That's a severe violation of sentient rights. The humans would never agree to it." "Actually," a familiar voice said from the gallery, "we would." Dr. Webb materialized in the chamber exactly as he had 3 days earlier, apparently having bypassed every security system without effort. But this time he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Captain Chun, still in her military uniform, but now carrying herself with the bearing of someone representing far more than a single ship. "Dr. Webb," Mordun said with what his species considered resignation, "I suppose it would be pointless to ask how you knew about our private deliberations." "We've been monitoring the situation, Dr." Webb replied without apology. "Not spying on your thoughts or communications, but watching the energy patterns of the debate. 50,000 years of survival has taught us to pay attention to the emotional rhythms of potential allies." Captain Chun stepped forward, her predatory grace somehow less threatening than it had seemed at Kepler Station. "High Counselor, we understand your concerns about trusting us. In your position, we would have the same doubts. Counselor Zuraketh's proposal for a psionic examination is not only acceptable to us, it's something we were prepared to suggest ourselves. You would submit to involuntary mental contact with a species you've never encountered?" Thekvor asked, his reptilian features showing surprise. "That level of neural exposure could reveal everything about your capabilities, your weaknesses, your true plans." "Yes," Dr. Webb said simply. "It could, but it would also prove that everything we've told you is true. And, right now, that's more important than maintaining our secrets." Zaraketh's form shimmered as she processed this response. "Dr. Webb, do you understand what you're agreeing to? Psionic examination isn't just reading surface thoughts. We would see your entire mental structure, your deepest memories, your species' collective unconscious. There would be no privacy, no hidden motives, no possibility of deception." "We understand," Captain Chun replied, "and we're prepared to accept that level of exposure if it convinces you to work with us." "Both of you?" Zaraketh asked. "The examination would need to include multiple subjects to establish patterns of honesty across your species." Dr. Webb and Captain Chun exchanged a look that conveyed volumes of silent communication. Finally, Dr. Webb nodded. "We'll need to consult with our leadership, but I believe they'll approve additional volunteers." How many humans are there?" Mordun asked suddenly. "In all our speculation, we've never addressed the basic question of your population." "Enough," Captain Chun replied evasively. "More than you might expect from a species that's been on the run for 50,000 years. Fewer than you might hope for allies facing an impossible war." Before anyone could follow up on that cryptic response, the chamber's emergency alert system activated. Warning lights bathed the assembly in pulsing red illumination as Communication Officer Leanna's voice echoed through the hall. "High Counselor, urgent message from the front lines. Admiral Cassandra requests immediate council response to a developing situation." The main display activated, showing the weathered features of Admiral Cassandra, the arachnoid commander who had been leading the Alliance fleet against the hegemony forces. Her 8 eyes showed the kind of exhaustion that came from months of continuous combat, but beneath the fatigue was something that looked like fear. "High Counselor, The situation has changed dramatically. 6 hours ago, all hegemony forces suddenly withdrew from the front lines. Complete withdrawal, no apparent tactical reason, no communication or demands. They've pulled back to positions beyond the galactic rim. A retreat, Velasa asked hopefully. Unknown, but unlikely, Admiral Cassandra replied. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy buildups at their withdrawal positions. Whatever they're planning, it's not surrender. Dr. Webb and Captain Chun were both staring at the display with expressions of growing alarm. Captain Chun spoke first. Admiral, can you provide specific details about the energy signatures you're detecting? Who is that? Admiral Cassandra demanded. This is a secure council communication. Dr. Marcus Webb and Captain Sarah Chun, Mordun replied. Representatives of a human species. Admiral, please answer their question. Even across the light years, Admiral Cassandra's surprise was visible. Human species? High Counselor, I don't understand. Answer the question, Admiral Mordun commanded. What are the specific characteristics of the energy signatures? Admiral Cassandra composed herself with military discipline. Multidimensional variance, quantum fluctuations outside known physics, power levels that suggest matter-antimatter reactions, but with impossible containment efficiency. Our science officers can't explain what they're seeing. Dr. Webb closed his eyes as if processing terrible news. How long until those energy buildups reach critical mass? Unknown, but the rate of increase suggests perhaps 48 hours? Why? What do you know about this? Dr. Webb opened his eyes, and every being in the chamber could see the weight of ancient knowledge and terrible purpose in his gaze. Admiral, those aren't weapon systems you're detecting. They're beacons. The hegemony has completed their primary mission. They're calling their masters home. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. 48 hours wasn't 18 months. The Devourers weren't coming eventually. They were almost here. High Counselor, Captain Chun said with military urgency, the time for debate has passed. We need to begin evacuating civilian populations and establishing defensive positions immediately. What about the psionic examination? Zaraketh asked. How can we trust you without confirmation of your intentions? Because Dr. Webb replied grimly, in 48 hours, you're going to see exactly what humanity is capable of when everything we care about is threatened. And after that, you'll never doubt our intentions again. High Counselor Mordun's crystalline form flashed with decision-making frequencies. Emergency powers are hereby activated. All Council fleets will follow human tactical direction. All civilian populations in the outer systems will begin immediate evacuation procedures. And may whatever gods our species believe and help us all. The war for galactic civilization was about to begin. The Kepler Station Command Center had been transformed into something resembling organized chaos. Holographic displays filled every available space, showing fleet positions, evacuation routes, defensive preparations, and the ominous energy readings from beyond the galactic rim. Representatives from 47 different species worked alongside human technicians whose understanding of galactic civilization had been gained through millennia of secret observation. Commander Telmoran found himself coordinating defensive positions with Captain Chun, their species' different approaches to military strategy, creating an oddly effective partnership. His people's deep ocean patience balanced her species' aggressive adaptability, while her forward thinking complemented his methodical planning. The civilian evacuation is proceeding faster than projected, Talmoran reported, his gills fluttering with what might have been relief. The human's transport technology is remarkable. Captain Chin nodded, but her attention remained focused on the long-range sensor displays. Dr. Webb, any change in the Devourer approach vector? Dr. Webb stood at the center of the organized chaos, somehow managing to coordinate dozens of different conversations simultaneously. The casual confidence he had displayed in the council chambers had been replaced by the intense focus of someone who had been preparing for this moment his entire life. 41 hours and counting he replied without looking up from his displays. The beacons are operating at 97% efficiency. Whatever else the consumed may be, they're excellent at following instructions. Dr. Webb, Counselor Zaraketh approached from the psionic analysis station, her form shimmering with mental effort. We've been monitoring the hegemony's withdrawal, and there's something you need to know. What have you found? They're not all consumed, she said quietly. Many of the retreating forces show normal psionic signatures. Scared, confused, but definitely still independent consciousness. I think the consumed were controlling normal species through some form of mental domination. Dr. Webb paused in his coordination efforts, and for a moment his expression showed something that might have been hope. How many independent minds? Thousands, possibly tens of thousands. They're all heading back toward the beacons along with their controllers, to be harvested when the devourers arrive, Captain Chun said grimly. The consumed probably promised them safety in exchange for cooperation. They have no idea what's actually waiting for them. Can we reach them? Talmoran asked. Warn them somehow. Even if we could, they wouldn't believe us, Dr. Webb replied. The consumed have had years to condition them. They'll view any outside communication as alliance propaganda. But they're heading straight into a trap, Zaraketh protested. Yes, Dr. Webb acknowledged sadly. Just like thousands of other species before them. The devourers have refined this process across millions of years. They know exactly how to use hope and fear to manipulate entire civilizations. Before anyone could respond, the tactical displays suddenly blazed with new contacts. Admiral Cassandra's voice filled the command center, carrying undertones of awe and terror. Command, this is Admiral Cassandra. You need to see this. The main display shifted to show Admiral Cassandra's flagship, but the view beyond it defied immediate comprehension. Space itself seemed to be tearing open, reality bending around massive structures that hurt to look at directly. The Devourer fleet was arriving ahead of schedule. Dr. Webb, Admiral Cassandra continued, our sensors can't get accurate readings. How many ships are we looking at? Dr. Webb studied the displays with the calm of someone who had seen this before. It's not ships, Admiral. The Devourers don't build vessels the way we understand them. They grow constructs that exist partially outside normal space-time. What you're seeing is probably equivalent to several hundred of our largest vessels, but they don't follow our rules of physics. How do we fight something like that? Commander Talmoran asked, his voice carrying the stress of facing an incomprehensible enemy. Carefully, Captain Chen replied, but her tone carried grim determination rather than fear. Dr. Webb, is the human fleet in position? All units are standing by, Dr. Webb confirmed. Admiral Cassandra, begin falling back to defensive positions. Do not engage the Devourer constructs directly. Repeat, do not engage directly. Understood, but what about the hegemony forces? They're moving straight toward those things. Through the sensor feeds, they watched in horrified fascination as the controlled species that had made up the hegemony's military forces approached the Devourer constructs. The alien vessels moved in perfect formation, their crews probably believing they were returning home to safety. What happened next would be burned into the memory of every being who witnessed it. The Devourer constructs reached out with extensions that looked like living shadow, touching the approaching vessels with impossible gentleness. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the ships began to change, their hulls flowing like liquid, their geometric patterns shifting into the same painful symmetries that covered the Devourer constructs. They're absorbing the ships, Zaraketh whispered, her psionic abilities allowing her to sense what others could only see. The crews, they're being consumed, but they're still conscious. They're still aware of what's happening to them. That's how the Devourers feed, Dr. Webb explained, his voice carefully controlled. They don't just kill, they preserve consciousness while consuming it. Every being they've ever harvested becomes part of their collective intelligence, forced to participate in their own consumption for eternity. The revelation sent chills through the command center. This wasn't just war. It was a form of existence so horrific that death would be a mercy. How do we fight something that can do that? Velasa asked, her photosynthetic patches flickering with terror. By making sure they never get the chance to touch us, Captain Chen replied. Dr. Webb, initiate Alpha Protocol. Dr. Webb nodded and activated a communication system that seemed to reach across impossible distances. All human units, this is command. Alpha Protocol is now active. Remember what we're fighting for. The response came not in words, but in action. Throughout the galaxy, space began to shimmer as humanity finally revealed the true extent of their presence. Ships materialized from hiding places that shouldn't have been able to exist, pocket dimensions folded space, and locations that existed outside normal reality. The human fleet that revealed itself dwarfed anything the Galactic Council had imagined. Thousands of vessels, each one representing technology that had been refined through 50 millennia of guerrilla warfare against an impossible enemy. But more than their numbers or their technology, it was their coordination that astounded the watching Council forces. How many humans are there? Tal Moran asked in amazement. Enough, Captain Shin replied with a smile that carried both pride and sadness. We've had 50,000 years to prepare for this moment. 50,000 years to develop technology, train personnel, and plan for the day when running was no longer an option. The human fleet began moving with the precision of a single organism. Their ships deployed in patterns that seemed to anticipate the Devourer's movements, establishing defensive positions that forced the alien constructs to approach through carefully prepared kill zones. But the Devourers had their own surprises. As they encountered the human defenses, they began to adapt, their forms shifting to counter human tactics in real time. Worse, they started broadcasting something that made every sensor display in the command center flicker with interference. What is that? Admiral Kessindra asked over the communication link. Psychological warfare, Dr. Webb replied grimly. They're broadcasting the consciousness of every species they've ever consumed. Every extinct civilization is crying out, begging for rescue, demanding to know why no one saved them. The effect on the Council forces was immediate and devastating. Entire crews began breaking down as they heard the mental screams of billions of consumed beings, the collective despair of civilizations that had faced exactly this situation and failed. All Council ships, mute all psionic frequencies immediately, Captain Shin commanded. Do not listen to the broadcasts. They're designed to break your will to fight. But the damage was already done. Several Council vessels were drifting, their crews too traumatized to function. Others were beginning to flee, their commanders deciding that retreat was preferable to the fate they had witnessed. This is how they've won for 2 million years, Dr. Webb explained, his voice carrying the weight of ancient knowledge. They don't just fight with weapons, they fight with despair. They make their victims complicit in their own destruction. How do we overcome it? Zaraketh asked, her psionic abilities making her particularly vulnerable to the Devourer's psychological attacks. By remembering something the Devourers never learned, Captain Chen replied, her voice growing stronger with conviction. By remembering that sometimes the greatest strength comes from accepting that you might lose everything to protect what matters most. As if in response to her words, the human fleet began a maneuver that defied every principle of military strategy. Instead of maintaining defensive positions, they charged directly at the Devourer constructs, their ships spreading out to present as many targets as possible. What are they doing? Tal Moran asked in horror. That's suicide. No, Dr. Webb replied, his voice filled with quiet pride. That's humanity. The human ships struck the Devourer constructs with devastating force, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of trying to destroy the alien entities, they were trying to contain them, using their own vessels as living cages to prevent the Devourers from spreading throughout the galaxy. Ship after ship sacrificed itself, ramming into the Devourer constructs, and then activating containment fields that trapped both the alien entity and the human vessel in isolated pockets of space-time. The crews of these ships knew they were doomed, but they fought anyway, buying time for their fellows to establish better positions. The psychological broadcasts are weakening, Zaraketh reported, wonder in her voice. Every human ship that sacrifices itself is somehow countering the despair. They're broadcasting something else. Hope, determination, the absolute certainty that their sacrifice means something. That's the secret the Devourers never learned, Dr. Webb said quietly. They consume species that are alone, isolated, fighting only for their own survival. But humanity was never alone. We've been part of something larger for 50,000 years. We've been protecting you, learning from you, becoming something new through our contact with dozens of different species. The battle raged for hours, human ships trading their lives for strategic advantage, while Council forces regrouped and began to understand their role in the desperate fight. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The Devourers had expected to face isolated, demoralized prey. Instead, they found themselves fighting a coalition that had been specifically designed to counter their advantages. Dr. Webb, Captain Shin called from her command station. The primary construct is beginning to withdraw. They're attempting to retreat to dimensional fold space. Let them go, Dr. Webb replied, though his expression remained grim. This was just a scouting force. The real fleet is still coming. How much time do we have? Talmoran asked. Months, maybe years, Dr. Webb said. They'll need time to analyze what they learned here, to adapt their tactics to account for our new alliance. But they will return, and when they do, they'll be prepared for everything we just threw at them. Then, we'll have to be prepared too, High Counselor Mordun said, his harmonics carrying determination that surprised everyone present. Dr. Webb, Captain Shun, the Galactic Council formally requests that humanity accept full membership in our alliance. Not as secret protectors, but as equal partners in the defense of galactic civilization. Dr. Webb looked around the command center, taking in the faces of beings from dozens of different species, all united in their determination to fight against an enemy that had consumed countless civilizations before them. High Counselor, he said with a smile that carried 50,000 years of hope, humanity accepts. Let's show the Devourers what the galaxy looks like when it refuses to go quietly into the dark. The war for the galaxy's survival had begun, but for the first time in millions of years, the prey had become predators, and the hunters had become the hunted. And in the depths of space, humanity finally came home.